Good morning, class. These are our notes about factoring polynomials using a greatest common factor. So we're first just going to go through and we're going to review distributing. So which is when I distribute, I'm multiplying something in. X times 9x is 9x squared plus x times 4 is 4x. In the second one, I am only distributing a factor of 2. So we're multiplying everything by 2. 2 times 3x would be 6x minus 2 times y is 2y plus 2 times 7 is 14. Let's go ahead and just adjust this, make it a little more clear. I think that's better. On the next row, 2x times 5x. 2 times 5 is 10. X times x is an x squared. Minus, and then 2x times 3 is 6x. For the last problem, we're going to multiply by an x squared. So 3x squared times another factor of x. Now I'm going to be multiplying two factors of x times one more. That's going to be a third power. So 2x cubed minus 3x squared times the 6. 3 times 6 is 18. And so we have 18x squared. So just a little review about distributing. Then we've got a review about zero product property. So for zero product property, what I'm looking for is, am I multiplying two things? And I am. I'm multiplying this binomial times this one. And is it equal to 0? Yes. So then I can use zero product property. And that says one of these two things that I was multiplying has to be equal to 0. So we make them each equal to 0 separately. And then we go ahead and solve. So on the first one, I would subtract 2 and then divide by 6. So x is negative 1/3. The second one, all we have to do is add 5. So x equals 5, or x equals the negative 1/3. So that's my solution on the first one. The second one, I'm multiplying a 3x times an x plus 7. It's equal to 0 again, so we can do zero product property. That means either my 3x is equal to 0 or my x plus 7 is equal to 0. So for 3x is equal to 0, we divide both sides by 3. For x plus 7 is 0, we subtract 7 on both sides. So x is 0 or x is negative 7. So this is just a little review. We're putting a lot of pieces today for things that we know. And so we wanted to first make sure that we're kind of reviewing all those relevant things. So what we're going to be doing today is going to have to do with distributing and zero product property and just how exponents work, how like terms work. So we're going to be starting with our factoring. So factoring is we are going to write a polynomial as a product of other polynomials. We are undistributing. We are factoring completely means no common factors are left. So let's just kind of look at the top. So what that means is we're going to be taking something like our answer here, and we're going to be going back and writing it with those parentheses. So we're distributing something out instead. It's like we're dividing it out, and that's called factoring. So the way we do this is we first have to figure out, what do these numbers 16 and 24 have in common? So the biggest thing that they have in common that I can divide them all by is going to be 8. 8 divides into 16, 8 divides into 24. And so we always want to pick the biggest number. So one of these has an x, one of them has a y. They don't have anything else in common, but they do have an 8 in common. So I'm going to write the 8 and then some parentheses. And then when we're distributing, we're multiplying in. When we're factoring, we're dividing out. So if this is a 16x and I'm dividing it by 8, I'm left with 2x plus 24. If I divide by that 8, because I'm factoring that back out, I'm left with 3y. And so if I distributed the 8, if I went back and multiplied this, 8 times 2x, that would give me back my original. 8 times 3y, that would give me back my original 24y. It does give me my original answer, but I've written it as a product. So that's our goal for factoring. And I know you're probably thinking, well, we spent all this time multiplying them out. Why are we factoring them back over again? And it has to do with what we're trying to do. Are we trying to look at what a function really looks like, and we want to see what degree it is? We want to just know what that polynomial looks like, maybe graph it. Or are we trying to solve it? Because when we're solving, we like them to be in this factored form where things are multiplied. So it really kind of depends on what we're doing. And all of this is just getting us more comfortable working with polynomials. So on the next one, both of my terms have an x. and my lowest power is x. You can always factor out the lowest power of something. So if everything has an x and the lowest power is x squared, you could factor out an x squared. In our case, our lowest power is that first power. But I can also divide 3 into both 9 and 3. So we're going to be factoring out a 3x. So for the first one, if I have a 9x squared, but I'm factoring out a 3x, 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then if I have two factors of x here, but I want one of them to be in front, then I need one to be inside. Because that way when I multiply, I still have two factors of x. Okay, plus sign here, so plus sign. And then we have to think what happens when we take 3x and we divide by 3x. And this is really confusing for students. A lot of times they just want to leave this blank or write a 0. But really what I'm asking you is 3x divided by 3x. And that's not equal to 0. That's equal to 1. So we need to make a 1 here. It's kind of like a placeholder. That way if we were going to distribute back in the 3x times the 1 would give me a 3x there. If it was a 0, 3x times 0 would just go away. It wouldn't do anything. All right, so on the next one, we've got quite a few more here. First, we're going to go through and see 5, 4, 9. So there's no numbers in common, but do we have any x's in common? We've got two factors of x, one factor of x, one factor of x. That means we can factor out one factor of x. It looks like we could factor out y just based on these two, but the first term doesn't have a y value. So all we can do is factor out x. So if I have a 5x squared, but I'm taking out one factor of x, I'm left with 5x. And again, x times 5x would give us back the 5x squared, plus 4x divided by x is a 4y, minus 9xy squared divided by x is now just a 9y squared. So we reduced all of those x's out of there, right? This one went from 2 to 1. This had one factor of x, now it doesn't have any. This one had one factor of x, now it doesn't have any. So we are doing like the opposite of distributing now today. Okay, on this next one, they're all even, and I have a 2, so I know I can divide them all by 2. And I also told you we can always factor out our lowest factor of x. So our lowest power of x. So I have 7, 5, and 4. So 4 is the lowest, so we can take a 2x to the fourth out of everything. So for the first one, I'm doing 8 divided by 2, that's 4. And I have 7 factors of x total. 4 of them are now in front, and so I have 3 left inside. Plus, the next one's 2x to the fifth. The 2 is going to be gone completely, right? I've already factored that out. But if I have 5 factors of x, but I'm taking 4 away and putting them in the front of the equation, I'm left with 1 factor of x. So that's x to the first power. But I don't need to write the 1 there. And then minus. And for the last one, the x to the fourth power is gone completely now. So it's just going to have a number here. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. All right, for our last two, we're going to put it all together. So we're going to be solving by factoring. So factoring means we want to write it as a product. We're going to have something in front times some parentheses, and using zero product property, where we make them both equal to 0 and we solve. So now we're putting it all together. And this first one's really tricky because it's not even equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 12y on both sides. Now I have 18y squared minus 12y is equal to 0. And from both of these, I can factor out a 6, and they have y squared and y, and a y. So for my first term, if I have 18y squared and I'm dividing by 6, I'm left with 3. Y squared, I factored out one factor of x, or one factor of y. I'm left with a y by itself. Minus 12y divided by 6y is just 2. So there's no y left there. And you could go back and you could distribute this, right? And just double check it. 6y times 3y. 6 times 3 is 18. Y times y is y squared. 6y times 2, that makes a 12y. My last step now is I have two things being multiplied, and they equal 0. So either 6y is equal to 0, or 3y minus 2 is equal to 0. And then I can go ahead and solve those. And we really needed more space on this. So if 3y is equal to 2, then y is equal to 2/3. So we end up with y is 0, or y is equal to 2/3. Our last one is already set up so that it's equal to 0. So we can go ahead and start factoring. I can divide a 2 out of both of them. 2 is the biggest number that divides into 2 and 8. It is my greatest common factor of 2 and 8. And if I have an x squared and an x, I can also divide out an x. So I'm left with, if I have 2x squared and I'm dividing out a 2x, I'm left with x plus 8x divided by 2x is just a 4. So remember, we can say like we're dividing it out, but we can also say we're factoring it out. So more than one way to word that. We have to be flexible with our math vocab. Set them both equal to 0. The first one we're dividing, and remember we have the two factors, right? We have the equal to 0. So divide the first one by 2 and x is 0, or subtract 4, x is equal to negative 4. All right, notes are all set. If you have any questions, please ask them during class.